Hello, I am Dr. Glen Misick. We are continuing this series on the Turks and Caicos Islands, preserving our heritage and culture. And today I have as my guest Dr. Carlton Mills, who is a legend in these islands, especially in terms of helping to preserve the history of our islands. And you've written a lot of books, and you've been very articulate in terms of our culture, our rich culture, and our rich heritage. So welcome to this series, which is will not only be aired here in the Turks and Caicos, but worldwide, international. We're on YouTube. We're going to be on there's a whole new system now of television. Amazon, Google, they all have, technology is changing very fast. So we're going to be on the internet, all over the place. So be careful what you say.
Thank you. Thank you for the heads up.
Yeah, but it's good having you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And by the way, how old are you?
Good question. Good morning again, and thanks, Dr. Misick, for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to share and for us to have this level of discussion. Actually, I was born in 1955, so I'm about 64 now.
I got 5 years on you.
Yeah, exactly. I'm waiting the next year to start getting back from National Insurance some of my hard-earned money that I donated to them.
Good. That's nice.
So I'm originally from South Caicos. My parents were...
We called it East Harbor back then.
East Harbor.
East Harbor.
East Harbor, yeah. They call it the Big South, And when growing up, we used to call it East Harbor, But in recent times, they changed it to South Caicos. Now it's called the Big South. But my parents were Oliver and Mabel Mills. My mother's originally from Middle Caicos. She was a Hall. And my grandmother, Marie Outen, was originally from Laurmis. So I have strong Middle Caicos heritage. And I understand that my grandfather was Mills. He was one of 3 Millses who came to the Turks and Caicos. One settled here, one went to Bermuda, and one went to Jamaica. Yeah. So
now, when you said they came, where did they originally come from?
England.
England,
yes,
okay.
the Mills, England. But my grandmother was originally from Middle Caicos.
Okay. And the Bermuda side, I was under the impression that all of the Mills came from Bermuda, but certainly they came from England.
Well, yeah, that's the story I was told, that they originally came from England. One went to Bermuda, one came here. So they actually split up. Yeah, so
so they did not come from Bermuda here.
Not from what I was told. I mean, that is debatable, actually, I believe, that is debatable. Yeah, but that's the story my father told me.
Yeah, the reason I say that because doing my research, excuse me, I know that the Turks Islanders came from Bermuda.
Yes,
we talk the same, we have the same accent. And by Turks Islanders, I'm including.
Okay, yes, because I still strongly believe that they came from Bermuda. I still strongly believe it,
Okay. And certainly Bermuda's an island too,
of course.
So they had to have come from England,
of course, and then
wherever,
knowing the relationship at that time with our salt industry.
You're right. And in fact, Bermuda did discover, in a sense, these islands.
Of course, exactly.
The industry, the salt industry. Your grandmother. So your grandmother was from Middle Caicos.
Middle Caicos, Laurmis.
Okay.
Yes.
Laurmis.
So I'm related to the Outens.
To the Outens.
And my mother is Hall from Bombara.
All right.
Now how her and my father met, I don't remember the story though.
Okay.
Yeah, but
well, guess what? Whose family you're probably related to. And he popped up on my ancestry.com.
Yes, probably.
Sidney Portier.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Whose mother was an Outen.
Okay.
And who emphatically told a good friend of mine that his mother was from the Turks and Caicos Islands.
I think I heard that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in fact, it's in his book. but he says the Southern Bahamas
Oh, yeah.
back in those
Yeah.
days, and that's always a cue.
Yes.
That it's
Well,
music,
unfortunately, back in those, I mean, even in the 80s, I remember when I was at UWI in Barbados, in order to easily identify our location, we would say the Eastern Bahamas.
That's right.
You know, and I'm happy now that we can have a distinct
Yeah.
identity in terms of our location. You know?
I was angry the other day
Yep.
when the movie came out about John Glenn,
Oh,
just
yes.
a couple of years ago,
Yeah,
2-3 years ago. And at the end, they said he landed in the Southern Bahamas.
Yes.
I was
Yes.
like, whoa, this is, what, 2017?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it because when I went to New York to school, to New York to finish up my schooling, people would ask, where are you from? And, you know, Turks and Caicos. Where is that? And blah, blah, blah. So you get frustrated.
Exactly.
And you say, I'm from the Bahamas.
Yes,
Okay?
yes. And Dr. Misick, you know, I'm stressing this point now, and I always do it, that the Turks and Caicos always had a unique identity.
Exactly.
You know, even when we were affiliated with Jamaica and also the Bahamas and Bermuda,
And Bermuda.
We had trading relations with places like Canada, with first world countries.
That's right.
You know, we had trade with England.
White gold.
Yes, white gold, white gold. You know, the best that was
best,
produced.
the best,
You know,
that's right.
so Turks is a distinguished place, man. You know, and we have to stress this.
Yeah.
We always had that different sense of identity, but and I'm glad now that we have actually found it, and we emphasize it now.
Anywhere I go now in New York, but I'm on the subway, I'm walking now. So if I have a cap on, some, you know,
Yes.
Turks and Caicos, people say,
Yes.
I want to go there. I know what that is.
Exactly.
so,
Exactly.
So it's, you know, God has blessed us, and we've come a mighty long way. Mighty long way. Even
Certainly.
when I left here, when I was there, I was born in Grand Turk, and I left when I was 13 to go to school in Jamaica,
Right.
Calabar High School.
Yeah,
and
prestigious school.
Cibar.
Cibar.
Cibar, you know. And happened even to be a boarding student too. But I lived in Meadowbrook with Reverend Dudley Stokes' mother-in-law.
Yes, I know.
And you know, Blossom, her parents,
Right.
and when I was in boarding, but even in Jamaica, you know, where you from, man? You know,
Yeah, they didn't know.
Turks and Caicos, small island,
Small island,
people.
yeah. I was at Excelsior, and
Yeah.
Ted Dwyer, God rest his soul, he would always make fun of me, small island.
Yeah,
you know,
small
I
island.
was the only foreign. Well, it was me and my cousin Sigrid Mills, but she
Okay,
was a
Sigrid,
year
yeah,
ahead of
Sigrid,
me.
yeah.
Lou Mills, my uncle, Lou Mills'
Right,
daughter. And he would always make fun of me in the class. He taught us social studies. You know, see the boy there, he from a small island. Jamaica's big island.
And now I like to say, I meet Jamaicans in New York. Who's big now?
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
But the other thing too, talking about our history and the relationship with Jamaica and also the Bahamas. And I like when Honorable Derek Taylor, he always stressed the point that we were not dependencies
That's right.
of these countries that Britain had associated us with. Because people must also understand, from research that I've done, Dr. Misick, a quarter of the monies that made up the budget in the Bahamas during that time came from taxes off our salt.
Yeah, that's right.
So how could you say then that we were dependent on the Bahamas? And the same thing with Jamaica.
Same thing with Jamaica.
Same thing with Jamaica.
I mean, they came here, they got a lot from here, and now they're still coming here.
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, we welcome
Exactly.
them.
Yeah.
But to say that we are dependent
No,
on
it's
them,
a
not-
misconception.
yeah, it was.
Yeah, you
and
know.
so we back to Laramus.
Yeah, okay, sure. I know you like this ancestral thing,
because,
yes.
you know, a lot of people, you know, I mean, I've had to straighten out some people down here too about perpetuating the whole nonsense about, you know, Turks Island, you're from the Caicos, you know, as if it's, you know, we're different people. We're not.
We're not.
On my father's side, we have the Adams. Okay, my father's mother was Laura Adams Misick, and her mother was Kate Spencer. So, and which I, have done some research on now. We knew that she was maybe either half white or white or whatever, but I knew that Spencer, if you know Grand Turk, where the Regal Beagle was?
Yes, yes.
Right, we lived, 3 generations of us were born in that house right in the back there, still standing. 3 generations. My father, his first wife, my brother Perry knows, his first wife was Victorina Wins.
Right.
But she was also related to my mother, whom, his wife died unfortunately, of tuberculosis way back then in the 40s. And then he married my mother, Helene Watkins Misick. And I found out that the Spencers are still in Bermuda.
Oh.
And I found a lot of cousins there.
Yep.
But we had Spencer Hill right across from us, and I remember that big mansion up there.
Yes.
I remember one of the grandsons, I think, that died. So when I did the search, this lady popped up, and I said, of English descent, and I simply said, listen, I'm just trying to find out the name of my great grandmother's father.
Yes.
That's all. But she didn't want that to be all. She came back. She compared our trees, and she said, listen, even though Ancestry is saying that you are a 4th cousin of mine, you are literally my 2nd cousin once removed. And she said, by the way, your great-great-grandfather was Ethelbert Richard Spencer. Okay, now, the reason I think that we're so close is because she said, and she didn't even ask me who was Kate Spencer's mother.
Right.
She just assumed that his wife was her mother. And she said, so your great-great-grandmother was Ophelia Adams Spencer. Now, watch this royal family syndrome thing, okay? Not incestuous, but people were marrying their cousins back then.
Yes.
And so the richness of coming to it. So let me then jump from, that's my father's maternal side, to my father's paternal side. His father was Nathaniel Bertram Misick, well known as Ponad. Ponad was a legend, definitely legend in the islands. Owned salt ponds, owned ships and all of that. Never went to school a day in his life. Right. But had common sense and a lot of smarts in terms of that. But Ponad's father, I believe, I believe my father told me he came from Africa as a little boy, about 9 years old. But his mother was Martha Williams Misick. She married his father. She divorced him because she said he was philandering. We know what that means.
Yes, definitely.
And so, but Martha was from Laramus. Okay. She was from Laramus. Williams from Laramus. Her niece was Margaret Williams. We call her Ma Williams. Who had all those children for Charles Aswood. And that's where all the Aswoods come in.
Gotcha.
He didn't marry her because she was a black woman, and there were a lot of taboos back then.
Yes.
But as you know, that many of her children went on to become dentists. We had Doc Aswood, who married a South Caicos woman. You had Louis Aswood, who has a lot of children here in the Turks and Caicos.
That's the father of the Honorable Louis Aswood? Louis Aswood?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I understand that he had one of the, probably in the 1940s, 50s, or somewhere around there, he had one of the first ice-making machines in Grand Turk.
Yes. A big businessman. I mean, he owned a lot. He did a lot of shipping. He was a merchant. But there was more than there was Donald Aswood, who was the dentist. Yes, he was my dentist when I was growing up. That's why I hate dentists to this day. Those people, they pulled teeth back then. And there was Louis Aswood, as I understand. There was Louis Aswood. There was Alden Aswad.
Oh, yes, Alden
Okay,
Aswad, yes.
you know Alden that
Yes.
was married to Edith Coverley.
yes,
That was
Alden.
his father,
Okay.
and another daughter named Dorothy.
Alden was the guy. No, that's the one we call Shorty.
No,
No, okay.
he wasn't short. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
No, I know Alden,
Yeah.
tall red guy.
Called him short, yeah.
We
Skinny
had a
guy.
nickname. We had a nickname.
Nickname for everybody.
Yes. Yeah, I had a nickname.
That's one of the things I'm trying to do,
Yes.
is get people's names
Yes,
right,
yes, true.
correctly.
True.
But Alden died just a few years
Yes,
ago.
yes.
There were other children. Oh, Nina Salva.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Okay, she was one of the daughters. Mary Jones was the youngest child,
Yes.
who was married to Father Jones, Father Clifford Jones,
Yep.
who was also my principal when we
Yes.
were growing up in the school.
Right.
So, but those people are very. I remember when I used to pass by. She lived right across from the constabulary,
Okay.
and where the clinic was in Grand Turk.
Yep.
And I would pass by there, and she would literally call me and, boy, come here. You're my family.
Yep.
You're Misick. You're my family.
Yeah.
Come here.
And so,
know.
that's one of the things I loved about our people when I was growing up.
Yeah.
They always reminded you
That's
that
right.
we are family.
family. We're family,
That concept of family.
Yeah.
That stayed with me for it's still with me, that family concept,
As I left here and went to other countries, much larger countries such as Jamaica and New York, of course, New York. I mean, I live in Manhattan, where it's really 12 miles long. It's an island,
Yes.
but we have about 3 million people on that island.
Yep.
But I miss that concept of family.
Yeah.
When I left here to go to Jamaica, a young boy, 13 years old, I cried like a baby. And I was telling someone yesterday in South Caicos that my father actually sent me to South Caicos in the summer of 1963.
Yes.
I stayed with Mr. Sidney Garland.
Oh, yeah,
one of
okay,
his
Mr.
good
Garland.
friends.
Yeah, okay.
My father was the chief deacon of the Baptist Church
Yes.
in Grand Turk, and so he said, "Listen, I need you to go away so that you can get used to being away from the family."
Yes. Okay.
And I never understood that back then, but it was very helpful
Yes.
for me to be away, because when I went to Jamaica, it was I was very lonely. I did not. It's a good thing we had some Bahamian friends at Calabar at the time.
Yes.
I was the only Turks and Caicos Islanders. Earl Hall, I think you probably
Yes, I
were
know
related to.
that. Yes.
Yeah. He was at the seminary. He was on the
yes.
seminary side.
Okay.
But back to the
Sure.
to the Outons. We always knew. We had a guy in Grand Turk by the name of Richie Out.
Richie, the contractor, right? Was he?
Huh?
A contractor, was he?
Contractor, a businessman, made a lot of rum.
Yes. I heard about it. Yeah.
And in fact, his son was one of the first, I think, Turks Islanders to go to Calabar, to Clinton. But Clinton didn't last too long.
Okay.
But Richie Out was from Laramus.
Yes.
And we knew that Richie Outen was family to us.
Okay.
Through the Williams.
Yes.
So when somebody told me about Sidney, Sir Sidney Portier, I then said, "Wow, okay." And I looked at it one day, and he popped up on my ancestry.
Right.
So,
okay.
But let's talk a little
Sure.
bit about you, and you have written some books.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Sure. I joined the community college in 1997.
Okay.
And one of the first things that struck me was that, the college was relatively new then, is that we were not teaching anything about Turks and Caicos history. So Reverend Julia Williams was the principal at the time, president. We had this discussion about teaching our own history and culture in the TCI at the college. And she said, go ahead. So I designed a course called TCI Studies, which thank God is still being taught today. And it's mandatory that every student who enters the college now has to do that course.
Excellent.
And as a result of designing that course, I said, we should do a book. And I couldn't write the book all by myself, so I got different persons
Contributors.
to contribute to it. And it's called A History of the Turks and Caicos.
Okay.
I've written a number of other articles in several journals. And also I did two articles, co-wrote with another person. There's a book that the Commonwealth produced Those were educational related articles. And I'm on to the second book right now. I'm doing a project for Fortis on the history of electricity in the Turks and Caicos.
That's great.
Which I'm hoping to have published by the end of this year or before.
Okay. That's wonderful. And I just read one of your articles on Mr. William
Oh, my
Mills.
uncle,
Your uncle.
W.H. Mills, yes.
Yeah.
Interesting guy.
Very.
Well, that's one of the things I'm trying to do now, and to highlight. In fact, Reverend Julia and I are looking at doing one. I had discussed it with her since last year on Mrs. Ona Glinton.
Mrs. Ona Glinton.
Yes.
Let me tell you about that real quick.
Sure,
Okay.
go
Mrs. Ona
ahead.
Glinton was my teacher.
Okay.
She lived 2 doors down from us when we grew up. Not only was she my teacher, but also her mother.
Yes.
We call her Ms. Nini. She was my teacher also. Those were educated people.
Yes.
I just spoke with her daughter the other day, Hyacinth.
Yeah.
Hyacinth. She lives in Philadelphia in South Jersey. And Hyacinth said something to me. She said, Glenn, you know, I just got a photo made of my mother, Mrs. Una Glinton. She said, because people are telling me that there's nothing in the school that identifies her.
Yes.
So I said, Hyacinth, that's a wonderful thing. And I will be interviewing Hyacinth. And she said, I said, you need to come down here. And she said she will come, if not this year, next year.
Yes.
But and there needs to be a ceremony.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know, and opening up of that school, unveiling of this portrait that she had made of her mother. So
talking about that, sorry. When I went to Madre Basin High School as principal in 1990, one of the first things I did was to get a photo of Mrs. Madre Basin and put it up in the staff room so anyone coming in there can see with a little history of her. And the same thing I did when I went to Raymond Gardner High School. I noticed too that there was nothing about Mr. Gardner, and we did the same thing. The point I'm trying to make is that we have to learn to respect and honor our people who have contributed so significantly to the growth and the development of this country, and for you and I being here. You know, they were trailblazers.
That's exactly.
You know,
I knew Mr. Raymond Gardner, stayed at his house. My father was captain of the government yacht. We would go down there.
Right.
And I just interviewed Mrs. Basin.
Sorry.
Marjorie Basin.
You know what was more upsetting to me? On one of the walls at the school, one of the buildings, we had a big photo drawn, a big thing drawn of Mr. Gardner. Painted, sorry, a big painting of Mr. Gardner. And it's gone now.
Wow.
They painted over it. And it hurt my heart.
Yeah.
You know?
We have to protect.
Yes.
It's an old saying. I say, if not us, who?
Who
If
exactly?
not now, when?
When?
Particularly because of our country is becoming even more diverse.
Yes.
And we welcome people here.
Yes.
You know, we welcome people. We have no choice.
We have no choice.
Because we've had to go to different places
Exactly.
too.
Exactly.
But we must maintain our Turks and Caicos Island culture.
Of course.
And I'm so proud of you and the work that you're doing on that. And
sorry, just before you mentioned about my uncle, and we have to understand that these guys were statesmen.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
This man, W.H. Mills, Honorable Mills, met with top officials in the United States. Went to
Senator from Florida.
Yes.
What's his name again?
I've forgotten his name.
I met him because I pastored in Florida.
Right.
But and you know what? Because of time, he got the idea from doing that about having a prayer breakfast here.
Yes, exactly.
I want you to know that he asked me to be the first speaker for the first prayer breakfast.
You're joking?
Really?
I'm
not kidding you.
Okay.
I have a little tape of that.
I got to add that piece in the article.
It's not that clear, but it is audible. I remember up at the South Base.
Yes.
He invited me down, and I think it was under the Honorable Washington was the chief minister at the time. Okay. But it was your uncle, Mr. Mills, that called me and asked if I would come and be the speaker for the first annual prayer breakfast.
He was reaching out to a TI.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
That shows the respect and the honor
Yep.
he head for another Tux Islander.
And we really need to do that even more.
Yes.
Let's touch upon here we are today is the 10th, I think, of May.
Yes.
2019. And I think yesterday they not celebrated, but commemorated the assassination, I would call it, of the Honorable James McCartney. And so we must, again, I must give a shout out to his dear wife, Dorothy, whom we grew up together. Her father was a deacon, was a Tom Brown in the Baptist church. And I knew Jags when I was growing up. We went to school on the parade. He was a little older than me. But we need to honor, again, our national heroes.
Of course.
And he was a hero. And it's good to see the Premier, Honorable Charlene Cartwright, this morning on Facebook, honoring him as a national hero. And we need to keep that up, too.
We have photos of a picture of him in our school, in our classrooms, and you could go to almost any one of our students, and who's that guy? And they're able to tell you who he is. The man has made a significant contribution to this country.
And we may disagree with his tactics and all that, but that was then, and this is now.
We also
had it not been for him.
Exactly. We also have to remember the era in which he was living in, because at that time, remember too, you had this Black Power movement. That particularly in Trinidad, and then Honorable McCartney was also influenced by the works of people like Marcus Garvey and and Rodney of Guyana. With this whole bringing about this whole awareness of being black and being important. Because we were a degraded race. But he was trying to develop that new sense of consciousness.
Exactly.
In our people.
The person who brought up the thing about Black Power was from Trinidad.
Yes.
Carmichael.
Carmichael, yes.
And Dr. Martin Luther King, who was my fraternity brother, by the way.
But exactly.
He and a minister. He was a little uncomfortable with that because they were using Negro back then, colored, all kinds of names. And finally, we decided we're going to call ourselves. We're going to name ourselves, and so then James Brown followed with the song, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud," which is so important. And so, and that's the whole purpose of this whole series of preserving or reclaiming our heritage and culture. Is to give us a sense of pride.
Of course.
And dignity. And dignity.
Yes.
I just did a piece on a guy that my father would always tell us about when we were growing up because he wanted to emphasize education. And his name, he said there was a guy that left here, his name was Rigby. And I couldn't, and for years I forgot all about him, but I did not forget the values that my father instilled. He said he went to New York, he worked as a janitor, went to night school, worked his way up to becoming a judge. Okay, just here recently, I was doing a funeral for a Rigby, and I remember for Mr. Marshall Rigby's daughter, Evelyn, and in the middle of my sermon, I said, there was a guy that my father told me about, and Evelyn's daughter, Teresa, shouted out, "Yes!" His name was Moxie Rigby.
In the funeral.
And I said, in the middle of the funeral. Some people can talk back in time. I'm Presbyterian. We're sort of the frozen chosen. But I said, talk back to me. And anyway, long story short, I went and Googled him. The guy popped up, oh my God.
Wow.
As the first African American who ran for office in Nassau County, Long Island. Okay, he had buildings named after he has buildings named after him. His name is Moxie Alexander Rigby. Now, if you look up some things and say, well, he was from the Bahamas, I knew what was going on there right away. So I went and I looked up his records where he applied for the draft for World War I. Okay, and at the bottom of it had birthplace Turks and Caicos Island. I was like, man. So I am going to interview his son. His son is still living. And we're going to tell his story. I wrote a little bit about it on Facebook. But I never forgot what my father instilled. If he can do it,
Exactly.
You can do it.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
really believe in role modeling.
And that's what we have to stress.
We definitely do. We're coming down to the end here, but I want to come back and do a second session with you, okay?
Anytime.
So, folks, I want to thank you for watching this with Dr. Carlton Mills. Again, preserving the heritage and culture of the Turks and Caicos Islands. May God bless you, and may you continue to support the series. You can write to me at gmisick, and make sure you put one S in there. Otherwise, it'll go to my nephew, gmisick@gmail.com. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.
Nice. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Let's do another one.
Sure.
Can we do another half an hour?
Okay.
We will call it part 2, okay?
No problem.